Cedar Point is the roller coaster capital of the world, and as of right now, they boast 16 coasters comprising the deepest lineup of any park out there. In this video, we are going to rank every coaster at Cedar Point from worst to best. Starting off, at the number 16 spot is Corkscrew. This is one of the many iconic coasters at the park and was the first in the world to have 3 inversions. However, today it is a very poor ride experience in my opinion. The transitions are lousy and it is very rough. Even if you are able to avoid headbanging, this thing still rattles your brain. It looks nice, but I would not be sad or surprised to see it removed within the next 10 years. Yes, I have it behind some family coasters because those are actually kind of enjoyable to ride and don't leave you with a headache. At number 15 is Cedar Creek Mine Ride. This is an aero mine train, and it's definitely a family coaster, but it has some lousy transitions, and if you can't tell by now, I despise bad transitions, so I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of aero coasters. Plus, the trains weren't very comfortable either. It just wasn't my kind of ride at all. Number 14 is Wilderness Run. This is a kiddie coaster, and as such, we could not ride it because I do not ask to borrow a stranger's kid to get the credit. The most notable thing about this attraction is that it was Intamin's first ever coaster. I have it above Corkscrew and Cedar Creek because I got off those in worse shape than I got on, so for that reason it slides in right here. Number 13 is Blue Streak. Built in 1964 by PTC, this is the oldest operating coaster at the park. Some enthusiasts praise this coaster for giving good airtime and having a smooth ride experience for a wooden coaster, especially one of its age, but I didn't really experience either of those things. I got badly stapled, so if there was any airtime to be had, I experienced none of it. And I also got jackhammered pretty badly, so put all that together and it wasn't a great experience for me. Maybe we should have gotten another ride not on a wheel seat and with a better lap bar position, but that didn't happen, so it goes here. At number 12, we have Woodstock Express. This is a Vekoma Jr. coaster. We rode it for the credit because even though we won't steal someone's kid for the height restricted kiddie coaster, we will still go down to the level of riding the junior coaster for the credit. And it was actually kind of fun and smooth, so that's why it ends up this high. Number 11 is Wild Mouse. I haven't ridden this coaster yet, but it looks like it would be right about here. Would it be ahead of the next coaster on this list? I'm not sure. But as of right now, I will give the edge to the number 10 coaster on this list, Iron Dragon. This is an aero suspended coaster that I was a little harsh on in a previous short video that we made. Saying that it meanders around, but this is a fun ride. It is a family coaster, so obviously its pacing isn't going to be comparable with some of the thrill coasters at this park. And it does have 2 lift hills as well. I did find that the first half of this thing isn't very exciting. However, the second half does pick it up a notch and has a cool swooping finale over the water. So for that reason, I do think I would have it beating out Wild Mouse. Now to the first of the large-scale thrill coasters, it's the B&M stand-up turned floorless Rougarou. This is a solid ride. It is nothing special, but it doesn't do anything bad either. There's one good moment of airtime with the cutback, but other than that, there's nothing special. The floorless aspect doesn't really add much. You just feel like you are sitting higher above the track. Most of the inversions don't offer very strong forces, and the layout is kind of bland for a B&M looper. Don't get me wrong, it's still a fun ride, and I didn't really experience any roughness or headbanging. And at most parks this would be one of the best rides, but this is Cedar Point, so it gets overshadowed by everything else. Number 8 is Magnum XL 200, the world's first hyper coaster. My biggest problem with this ride is how bad some of the transitions are, but the final stretch of triangular airtime hills deliver the most intense and crazy airtime I've ever experienced. I was laughing uncontrollably because of how ridiculous it was. Most enthusiasts claim that the Magic Seat gives the strongest airtime on the ride, but the difference between the back row and car 1 row 3 does not make as much of a difference as I thought it would. It's barely noticeable in my opinion. I almost feel like the hype around the Magic Seat is a placebo effect at this point. Either way, no matter where you sit, you'll get some of the strongest and most insane airtime ever. Plus, the trains on this are basically glorified mine trains, so the restraints do not come down very low at all. All in all, this is a fun ride, but I do not enjoy it as much as some enthusiasts like Airtime Thrills who put it in their top 10s. The next spot belongs to Valraven, which is another coaster on this list which we didn't get to ride. The lift motor broke and they had to replace it, which gave the ride about 1 to 2 weeks of downtime. So for that reason, I will leave it here. It has a 200-foot, 90-degree vertical drop, and a few inversions as well. I'm sure it's smooth as glass, which is why I have it above Magnum, for example, but considering the fact that it was closed and the vest restraints, I can't put it above the number 6 coaster, Gemini, an aero racing hybrid coaster. When it opened in 1978, it was marketed by Cedar Point as the tallest, fastest, and steepest coaster in the world. This is just a fun ride, especially when racing. The ride doesn't blow you away in terms of forces, although there are a couple good moments of borderline ejector airtime, but what makes this ride great is the racing. When you go through the turnarounds, you can high-five the other train and taunt them as you race past. But when you don't race the other side, each turnaround just becomes a dead spot on the layout. But it's running both sides more often than it's not. Plus, it has those aero trains with the lap bars that leave plenty of room for airtime. At number 5, it's the second best B&M in the park, Gatekeeper, the 170-foot tall wing coaster which opened in 2013. This coaster was part of an expansion that included a renovation of the front entrance. This is definitely one of the prettiest coasters out there. Its blue and white color scheme and its sitting right next to the lake are perfect. And the keyholes that hover over the main gate are a great touch as well. The ride's experience is great too. The wing over first drop offers great hang time, especially to the front of the train, and the following pull-out has great positives. You then traverse a floaty Immelman. There is a pointless airtime hill that gives at best a little airtime, but the vest restraints take away most of it if there was any to be had. Then a corkscrew that gives good whip and positives following that. Then you go through the signature element, the keyholes. Honestly, I thought there would be better head choppers on this element, but once again, the vest restraints make you feel very restricted. It's still a fun element though. There's a forceful dive loop before heading into the better of the two keyhole inversions. This inline twist gives some hang time as well as laterals as you rotate around the track. Then you pop up into the mid-course, traverse a pointless helix, and head into the brakes. Gatekeeper is a fun ride and has some good positives and hang time, but has a couple of dull elements and a really bad finale with the helix. Raptor is taking the number 4 spot in the position as the best B&M in the park. This was the largest coaster B&M ever had built at the time, standing at 137 feet and reaching a top speed of 57 miles per hour. This coaster has a major presence over the midway with its bright green color scheme, and it has the loudest B&M roar in the park. The ride experience is also great. The drop gives whip in the back and a little bit of floater airtime. The vertical loop has good positives, and the following 0G roll is floaty and whippy at the same time. Then you enter the Cobra roll, which violently whips you around your seat, entering and exiting the element. It's one of the best moments on the ride. You then enter an upwards helix and hit the mid-course, which hopefully won't slow you down. The drop off the mid-course gives laterals and airtime as long as you don't slow down beforehand. The pull out of the drop also gives strong positives. Then you traverse 2 extremely snappy corkscrews that both whip you around like a rag doll. This is definitely the 2 best elements on the ride. After the corkscrews, you enter a downward helix that is very forceful and makes me almost gray out almost every time. The ride flies into the brake run and slams into the brakes. That is the only bad part of Raptor. The whole ride is intense and forceful, and the Cobra roll and corkscrews violently throw you around. It is non-stop intensity from start to finish. Some enthusiasts complain about headbanging or a rattle on this invert, but I've never experienced anything like that. At the number 3 slot, we have Millennium Force, the world's first giga coaster. It is not forceless. This is arguably the park's signature coaster, even 23 years after it opened. The views on this coaster are spectacular, and on clear days you can actually see Canada from the top of the lift hill. The following drop is one of the best on any coaster. The drop is extremely long and gives borderline ejector airtime with an 80-degree angle of descent. The first overbank delivers very strong positives which make me gray out almost every time I ride it. You then bank left into a high-speed turn in a tunnel. The track rises up into a very elongated camelback that gives some floater airtime for about 5 seconds. The next part of the ride is where I can see why people complain a little bit. It is just a couple of overbanks and turns. They give some positive G's and the sense of speed is really good, but other than that, it doesn't do too much. There's another airtime hill which usually gives a little bit stronger airtime than the first. The track then turns left into a tunnel which leads right into a speed hill which gives a good pop of ejector airtime. There's some straight track that flies past the queue and one more overbank before the brakes. Overall, this is a solid ride with a great sense of speed, good positives, and excellent drop, even if it is no longer one of the best coasters in the world. Before we get to the number 2 coaster on this list, I ask if you would please consider subscribing since you've made it this far, or at least hitting the like button down below. It's free and really does help out our channel. Now back to the rankings. At number 2 is Maverick, the short but powerful Intamin Blitz. The ride starts off with a sneaky quick launch lift hill before flying over the 95-degree, 105-foot drop. In the back row, this is one of the most powerful first drops I've experienced. It is hard to explain the sensation you get. The following pullout slams you back in your seat with intense positive G's. You then whip through a couple of S-bends and transitions that are done perfectly. Each turn gives good positives, and the transitions all offer really strong whip and some airtime. Then you enter a very intense camelback. The train banks to the left and enters the only somewhat underwhelming moment on the ride, the horseshoe roll. It is just two corkscrews back to back that are pretty much average inversions. You do get some nice float through them, but they just feel a little out of place in such an intense layout. Next, you head into a tunnel underneath the station where the second launch is located. It is a forceful and punchy launch, especially for a magnetic launch, but the tunnel adds a lot to it. The snap to the left is very sudden, and at night you can't see it coming at all. So even though you know it's coming and you're anticipating it, you don't know exactly when it's coming. There's a small hill with trims that slow the trains down a little bit. Then you head down a right banking turn, through an S-bend, and into the best part of the ride, the Stangle dives. Both of these elements deliver crazy whip and sideways airtime, making it one of the most intense moments on any coaster. There's one more ejector-filled speed hill before you hit the brakes. Maverick is an incredibly intense experience from start to finish, and is a jack of all trades in terms of forces, which is why it ranks number 2 on this list. And no surprise here, Steel Vengeance is number 1. It really is the perfect roller coaster. Well, except for the restraints. After losing your eardrums on the obnoxiously loud lift hill, you crest the lift hill and descend down the 205-foot drop, which is a great drop, but it's pretty similar to other large-scale RMC drops. And the crazy thing about Steel Vengeance is that the first drop isn't even close to being the best element on the ride. Then you fly over a small speed hill which delivers a small amount of airtime before heading into two of the greatest back-to-back elements on any coaster. First is the top hat. It is a massive camelback that turns to the left but doesn't bank, so you get a nice dose of laterals to go along with the ridiculous ejector airtime. But the next airtime moment happens to be even better. The outer bank turn delivers even stronger and more sustained airtime, and it feels like you are going to go flying out of your lap bar, which is just dragging you along. Then you head into a step up which leads into the 0G roll. This inversion is awesome. It happens so far off the ground and it seems to rotate forever. The next element is a wave turn that gives some airtime, but the best part is how far off the ground this element happens. Next you add into a variant of a 0G stall. The whip into and out of the stall is amazing and you get some hang time as well. This element is so crazy that I elbowed my brother in the head on accident. After the stall, you drop down, which gives another pop of ejector. Then there is a double up which leads into the brake run, which gives maybe the sharpest airtime of the layout except the finale. The drop of the mid-course is really good, and the following airtime hills all give really good ejector. Then there's the off-axis hill which dives into the structure. This is another element which gives very sustained ejector airtime, but combined with the head choppers, it makes it one of the best elements on the ride. The rest of the ride consists of many bunny hills, wave turns, all of which give great airtime, and two 0G rolls that are enhanced by being inside the structure. This ride has the most airtime on any coaster for a reason, and mixes in amazing inversions as well. It is the perfect coaster and the perfect headlining coaster for Cedar Point. And that will do it for our rankings of every coaster at Cedar Point. Let us know your thoughts on these coasters and on our rankings in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all next time.